Hello and welcome to the Moving People podcast. My name is Pierre Fitter. In my day job, I lead BCW India's hub, which supports our clients with digital data, content, and creative services. And I also moonlight as host of this podcast, where I have the pleasure of talking to some of the PR world's most experienced leaders on all things public relations and comms. Today's episode is going to focus on a topic that I think everyone in every industry has been talking about for nearing 2 years now, and that's artificial intelligence. And what I'm really happy to tell you is that we only had one guest in mind when we thought about this episode, and we're very, very glad that he said yes. So, Chad Latz, welcome to the Moving People podcast. Tell us about how you got to where you are today and what you do at BCW.
Thank you, Pierre. It's great to be here with you. I'm our Chief Innovation Officer, and I look after our digital business globally. And I've been with the agency in its different manifestations for more than 14 years and over 2 decades in integrated comms and marketing. Most of that time's been looking at the opportunity to connect brands with their stakeholders through digital channels, and my work includes leading our innovation function. These days, most of what we're looking at is the use of artificial intelligence, but my role is often looking at emerging technologies and opportunities to drive impact for clients. And I guess what I love about the work, in addition to working with clients and our teams, is the ongoing change in the business. In technology and the issues our clients are facing, it's always interesting in that way. And it's really an exciting time to be in our industry and at Person.
I actually wanted to pick up from something you said because you've seen the introduction of all sorts of technology into communications and marketing throughout your career. Does AI feel different? Is it different to other technologies? Tell us about that.
Yeah, 100%. I sort of think about it this way, Pierre. The internet was really about the democratization of information. And then, of course, you think about what happened with social media, which I think in a lot of respects was about the democratization of media. Those sort of early days of blogger networks, the ability of putting publishing in the hands of everyday people. What I think generative AI is really about, it's about the democratization of cognitive processes and creativity in a way that I think we've never experienced before. So, it's not to say that AI is a new practice. It's been around for a very, very long time as a science. And in fact, probably some of my friends who have been working in the industry for a very long time, they sort of grumble and groan a little bit about why is it now that it's finally had its moment in the sun. But I think that that's probably for a variety of reasons. We saw what we basically described as the mass consumerization of AI back in November of 2022 when OpenAI dropped ChatGPT. And I think that moment really unleashed the imagination of pretty much anybody who had an opportunity to touch it. Some of our colleagues over at WPP, they say, that year was the year that AI got a UI. So this idea that, you could go in and interface with the technology in a really easy way. Prior to that, it was, we were doing, I think we laid down at the agency our first AI strategy in 2017. And we had been doing work in the space that actually, we could talk a little bit about that. That got quite a lot of recognition, won a lot of awards. Interestingly, the work was largely in the healthcare space. And then the space went a bit quiet for a while. And I think AI was a difficult sell in communications back in those days, largely because, it was time consuming to implement, expensive to put in place. Training the models took a whole lot of effort. It was difficult to explain to clients exactly the value that they were going to see. Now, of course, they can experience that for themselves. And I think if you look at the cycles, I think we have a great and exciting moment, I think, in communications right now. I think it's probably the most exciting time to be in our business. Social media at its onset was largely the domain of communications and public relations. And, we were thinking very, very early on about the channel as a vehicle to build and manage corporate reputation. Of course, then, marketing caught up with the idea of being able to scale reach in a peer-to-peer way or a brand-to-peer way. And then, of course, the media dollars then very, very quickly followed. And of course, it's center of gravity in a lot of those respects shifted over to the marketing side. But I think, as communications practitioners, we obviously see that as really a really critical thing. In the case of generative AI, there's different use cases for different marketing and communications disciplines. And I think what we're doing in the communications space is absolutely unique.
I think it's interesting that you start with generative AI because there's also been a lot of conversation about how easy it is now for anyone to produce very, very vast volumes of content and potentially even for harm. And in the early days of social media, I remember people worried about bots and influencer networks, and you saw some of that over the course of elections over the past 10, 15 odd years. We're seeing some of that come into effect now. We were talking about 50 elections through the course of this year, that there are fears about that, challenges with that as well.
Yeah, well documented is probably the number one concern in 2024 in the context of elections or otherwise. The notion of utilizing the technology for mis and disinformation. And that, to your point exactly, publicly available consumer grade technologies that produce a fairly high quality product or fairly high quality output can very easily be applied for nefarious purposes, right? So, again, I think maybe another reason why it's important that we have our moment in the sun as communicators, because, at the end of the day, it's going to be up to us to help organizations navigate a very, very complicated, cluttered, and difficult media and information ecosystem. So, it's very, very interesting. Like, no matter where you turn and you look, I think World Economic Forum in the risk, in the annual risk report cited it really at the top of the list. Election officials are saying that it's a massive problem. If you turn your attention to the healthcare space, the World Health Organization says squarely we're in the midst of an infodemic where misinformation impedes people's ability to get the right patients to get the right information to receive quality care. So, it's problematic no matter what sector you look at, no matter what practice you're sitting in the business. It's something that's critically important that we direct our attention to.
I want to pick up on that point you mentioned about the information landscape and the media landscape that our clients operate in, because it's the same landscape that their customers and stakeholders are getting their information in. And we talked about disinformation and misinformation a minute ago. We decided last year, and by saying we, I mean BCW decided last year that our first big play in this space was actually not going to be generative AI. We talked about cognitive AI earlier. What was the strategic reason behind that decision? Because this BCW Decipher, the product that we launched, is fascinating. It's been winning industry awards. Why did we choose that as the first deployment?
It's a great question. I think you have to start any technology implementation through the lens of what problem are you trying to solve for your clients. And we could see sort of two things happening. A broader, what we expected to be a broader receptivity by clients to have a dialogue and to implement AI solutions following the drop of ChatGPT in November of 22, right? So it was a bit of landscape building that was happening around the general subject. We knew that we needed to re-up our attention in the space on the topic ourselves. And we started to take a look at, what we thought the most pressing issues were going to be for our clients. So again, the point, start from the problem. The problem is, clients are awash in data. They have very, very little insights. Predictive analytics models, to the extent that they existed, were very, very simplistic in nature, Pierre. I mean, it was like we would talk to some of our technology partners, providers, all of the SaaS platforms, and they would say, oh, yeah, we can predict virality. But it was a very simple model. If something had 100 interactions in the first hour and 200 interactions in the second hour, it'll have 400 interactions. And that was it. And I think we know, and it's been pretty well studied, that that's not how information really spreads. If you sort of think about information or information contagion, it certainly doesn't reflect the way that bot networks work that would otherwise be propagating information. So you had that phenomenon happening, and at the same time entering probably the most complicated information and issues landscape we've ever seen, right? So we have armed conflict now in multiple parts of the world, the election issue, which you appropriately mentioned. We've had, we're on the back end of a pandemic and figuring out how the world adjusts to sort of new normals in the healthcare space. Issues around supply chain, diversity, equity, inclusion, and woke capitalism, as we're sort of seeing it play out in cultural issues among brands worldwide. So, clients quite honestly are having a challenge figuring out what square to put their stack of chips on. Like they only have so much time, so much bandwidth, and so much investment, and they needed a better means of predicting how audiences may react to any one of a number of themes, communications, or otherwise. We didn't see anything like that out there in the marketplace. And, we created Decipher in partnership with a cognitive AI company called Limbic. Had known Josh Levin, one of the co-founders, for quite some time. And they were doing some really, really interesting work on the use of cognitive AI, particularly for U.S. and foreign allied governments, on some heavy issues: election integrity, vaccine-related issues, vaccine hesitancy. And I think we sort of both arrived at the same idea together, which was that, well, what if we could take this ability to predict what audiences believe, what audiences will likely engage with, and what will create impact by way of communications for brands detect things like contention. When will something that's said create contention between two different audiences, and to be able to do it everywhere for every audience? And that was really a bit of the genesis for Decipher. And so, we quickly came together. We built a working group, created a long-term partnership with Limbic, and we said, let's use these cognitive AI models and that expertise, our experience with communications, brands, our global reach and distribution, and of course our expertise in comms and issues, to bring a solution that the industry had never seen before out to market. And so as a result, we launched BCW Decipher powered by Limbic it was the end of July, beginning of August of last year. And part of the value, of course, of the partnership and what we've been doing is that we've got our ears to the ground in terms of what the practices are needing, what sectors are needing. And so we've been able to very rapidly iterate new innovations for our clients and for the agency on top of AI models and frameworks. So, people sometimes say, oh, well, who else can we buy Decipher from? You can only get Decipher. You can only use Decipher when you come to Burson, and we're pretty excited about that. As you mentioned, the industry has definitely taken notice. We've won a couple of big industry awards for our very unique and innovative use of artificial intelligence. So, the distinction, as I think you rightly point out, is the difference between generative AI, which is about replicating human tasks, creating content of any type, ask it to write a press release, whatever it is that you want it to do. Cognitive AI is really about building networks that help simulate the way that audiences will think.
Yeah.
Right. So the sort of cognitive process.
And that's actually the magic for a lot of marketers, because effectively what you have is a computer system that can tell you this is how your audience may or may not react, or likely to react to a story or a theme or an issue or news story. What are the ways in which we're applying this artificial brain or artificial audience persona in some of our client work? Because there's some really interesting case studies.
The uptake on the solution on Decipher has actually been really, really phenomenal, Pierre. And there's so many different use cases that we're looking at. And one of the things that I've really, really enjoyed about this process of creating something new that the agency can bring out to clients is that, we had our ideas about how it would, the purposes it would serve. You'll remember we initially launched the solution as technology and a consulting service that we would use to address mis and disinformation.
Misinformation, correct, yes.
But, because of course, whether it's a bot that spreads it or a human who spreads it, being able to predict what people will find believable is really sort of at the crux of the issue. And that was a great use case. But what we started to see very, very quickly is that the ability, to your point, the ability to be able to predict how audiences will likely react and behave as it relates to a particular communication has lots and lots of different applications. So for example, we've got probably at this point now 20 clients. Many of them are repeat clients who are using the technology over and over again. In some cases, a healthcare client came to us and they said, listen, we've got 4 positioning statements that we were thinking about taking out to market for one of our business units. We needed to appeal to 4 or 5 different audience groups across different geographies. Can you use the cognitive AI model and Decipher to tell us which one will perform best across those audiences? And we can run any communication through the model and give a very, very specific score. For each of these different audiences, here's how the message or the communication performed, and then we can make strategic decisions around which way to nudge it. We can do that with written content, we can do that with images, we can do that with video, we can run all these things through the model. We can do it with influencers, right? To what extent will an audience find a person credible, and will they be likely to engage with the content that they produce? And that puts a whole new slant on influencer marketing, which has historically just been about reach and engagement, right? What we're talking about here is being able to assess the credibility of any communication. I'll give you another case study because I love to talk about client work. One of our technology clients, big brand that maybe many of you are either familiar with or working on, came to us and they said, we've got an announcement we want to make. It's pretty important for our business. They said, we wanted to know, can you evaluate 5 different communication scenarios, 5 different messages using 4 different spokespeople for 4 different audiences, right? And of course, we used Decipher to do that for them, brought them back a report. And this intelligence that we're creating, Pierre, is finding its way into boardrooms, C-suites. You opened our conversation by talking about communications. I think the role of communications relative to technology, the role of communications relative to business. Our applications of these technologies are absolutely unique. It's not something that's happening in marketing and advertising space. And by being able to say to a CEO, CMO, CCO, here are the key actions. Here's what we predict with a high degree of accuracy will happen. And here are the key considerations as a result of that, and base that on data. It's really taken our communications consultancy. We see it to the next level. And the adoption's been great. Cross-sector.
Yeah.
I mentioned that our healthcare business in particular, I would say if I look at the portfolio of Decipher clients, maybe 60% of them are in fact healthcare clients, which I think some people might feel is an anomaly. Healthcare is oftentimes thought to be the laggard in a lot of these areas, but you've got
Because
an
it's
industry
regulation around it.
the regulatory
Yeah.
environment, of course, but like if you think about it as a sector, they've been one of the early adopters of artificial intelligence on molecule development and otherwise. So when I go in to talk to a client about applying cognitive AI in a communications context, they get it right away. It doesn't frighten them in any respect, and there's a tremendous degree of enthusiasm, and so as a result, great uptake there. Great uptake, obviously, on the corporate reputation side. And one other thing I'll just add, which is really, really interesting and surprising, is that the ability to be able to predict the impact of any communication means that we also are finding ourselves in interesting interactions in the use of Decipher for marketing and advertising related content, right? So, to be able to say, and we have a couple of clients where we're doing this, they give us a collection of ad assets. They say, we want to know how these are going to perform. I mean, you could go out and do traditional survey methodology, focus groups, that sort of thing. We do obviously a lot of that, and there's a place for that there. But in a matter of seconds, to be able to get a forecast about what these audiences think based on data that we've used to train up the models it's pretty powerful.
And so essentially what you've been able to do is allow the C-suite to make better decisions, better informed decisions on where they spend their time, energy, capital, resources when it comes to marketing, communications, and advertising. Otherwise, a process that could have taken days or weeks has effectively, as you said, been cut down to seconds.
I think it's easy in some respects for agencies to fall in love with the solutions that they create, but the reaction that we've been getting from clients has actually been phenomenal. Corey, as you might would expect, Corey and both Anna Maria have been huge advocates of pushing the gas, really stomping the gas on the innovation front. As Corey often relates to teams and to clients when we talk about Decipher, this is a technology that, he even says he wished he had when he was at Google. So, I think maybe we're onto something. Maybe we've got something of value that clients can use. Certainly the reinforcement's has been outstanding, and we've been able to build a business around it. So I've got a debt of gratitude to team members, including yourself, Pierre, for being such advocates for what we're doing on the innovation side of things, and in particular the AI space, bringing Decipher to your clients across India. It's been really, really remarkable. We're scaling the work, keep trying to keep up with the demand. It's been pretty fantastic.
I will add this to what you just, because you mentioned Josh earlier. He is such a joy to work with because there's just so much willingness to just see this out there. So yes, Josh Levin.